just do a quick, like how you got into this, how you got into sports betting, a little bit more about your major, and then also maybe about the story about teaching your family and teaching your sister about all this stuff.
Sure. Okay. So I graduated from Syracuse with a degree in sport analytics. It was the first of its kind. Syracuse is the only one to offer it. I was in the inaugural class.
That's cool.
Yeah,
is there any other like universities or just Syracuse?
It's starting to come to a few universities, and they're starting to build a curriculum like the one we had. But I was in the inaugural class of like the first 4 years of sport analytics curriculum with the degree. Yeah.
Can you break down a little bit, like what kind of classes did you take that especially pertain to sports betting?
So interestingly, it's not much of it pertains to sports betting. The part that makes it sport oriented is all the data we worked with was about sports.
Gotcha.
I did have to take some sport management classes, sport business, sport marketing, that sort of stuff, but it's also all the math and all like the coding languages that we learned, all the data we worked with was all sport oriented.
Yeah, that's cool. And you say it's not related to sports betting, but I mean, I'm in finance and I feel like there's financial aspects that.
Yeah, I mean, sports betting covers a wide range. You can, any sort of background, you can find a connection to sports betting.
Yeah.
It's just like the stock market for investor banking. It's kind of similar.
Definitely. And we'll talk about this a little bit more later, but betting through emotion versus research, I was like, that's the same thing.
Yeah.
Like investing in the stock market.
Exactly.
Betting through research, which is like, oh my gosh, everyone's talking about this hot stock, like we have to jump in it now. So very, very cool. That's awesome. Well, congrats. And then
thank you.
Masters now.
Yeah, I'm currently in a master's program through Georgia Tech in analytics.
Cool. Yeah. Wow, that's awesome. Yeah. Okay, do you want to talk to me a little bit more about how you got into sports betting?
Yeah, sure. So I've always obviously loved sports, played it my whole life.
Yeah.
And when I was younger, my dad would bet on sports and kind of talk to me about it, but I didn't really understand it.
Yeah.
I'd kind of just root for the teams he told me that he bet on, that I root for. And I also, when I was younger, I learned how to play poker. My parents loved playing poker, and we played always at a Thanksgiving family tournament. We'd have a big Thanksgiving dinner.
Fun.
Have a family poker tournament. My uncle was a big poker player, and I would always sit on his lap and he would teach me.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
So I learned poker at a very young age, and poker has a lot of odds and implied odds, kind of similar to sports.
Yeah.
So when I got to college and started to really become of the age to understand how to gamble and, the value of money in sports, it was kind of a quick connection for me and my friend group. I made, like, my friends that were in my major, there were only 25 of us in our class. So it was very easy to make connections. I mean, those are some of my best friends, my best friends for life. So yeah, it was a quick pickup for us. We loved it. I mean, we would go to the casino together. So we loved odds. We loved, the idea of gambling. Not crazy money, just for fun.
Yeah. Can you tell me maybe either your biggest like success or biggest failure or like biggest like moment of learning?
Biggest moment of learning. Yeah, it's understanding how Vegas makes their odds, how the odds are created. I don't fully understand like what metric or what simulation system they use. But it's being able to identify when Vegas thinks there's an edge in one way or the other. Like if you think, it's one thing that I learned is that if you think a spread looks fishy, Vegas usually knows something. Like Vegas is always right is one thing that you just have to get through your head. Vegas is always right.
Yeah.
Even when they're wrong, even when the spread is like 5 and a team wins by 30, like Vegas knows something. So it's kind of being able to recognize those moments and understand what we, like my friends and I like to call a trap line. Like you think this team, there's only a 2-point spread. You think, oh, they're definitely going to cover. They should be a 10-point spread. You got to take a step back and think, well, why are they a 2-point spread? Vegas knows something.
Yeah. Okay. So this is kind of perfect place to start. Can we talk a little bit about spreads?
Yes.
I don't know if we're going to be jumping ahead here. We can always come back.
No. Yes, we can.
I think spreads will be kind of interesting because when you pull up sports betting and you pull up, those are kind of the first numbers that you see. And so I don't know if this will be easier if you just talk through it. We can pull up the whiteboard on here too if you want to like write things down. I don't know if you ever use it.
I could just talk through it, give some examples. So spreads are basically Vegas's way of balancing the game. So if you have a team that's the best team in the league playing the worst team in the league, you know, if I was to ask you, do you want to put $20 on the worst team in the league and I'll take the best team in the league? You're going to say no.
Wouldn't make any sense.
They're not going to win.
Yeah.
So now I would say, what if I gave you a 10-point spread? So my team had to win by at least 10 points. That balances the playing field. So if your team can lose, they lose by 8 points, you still win. You would win our bet. So that's what spreads are. That's Vegas's way of balancing the game. So you bet on one side or the other.
Cool. Can you tell me a little bit about that, like plus and minus that goes outside of the spreads? What's that mean?
Yeah. So plus, it can be a complicated idea when you first look at it. It can look overwhelming. It's actually very simple. If it's plus, then you add it to the team. So if you have let's say Lakers +5, you take the Lakers score and you add 5 points. And then you assess the score at that point. So if you have Lakers +5 and the final score is, let's say Lakers 100 and the Knicks 104, you're actually adding 5 points to the Lakers, which makes them win by 1. So you would win your +5 bet.
Gotcha.
And minus is the opposite. So if it's Lakers -5, you would take 5 points away from the Lakers and then assess the score.
Cool. So does that mean that the minus is the underdog and the plus?
No, the minus would be the favorite.
Sorry,
because yes, so if it's Lakers -5, if it's Lakers -5, Lakers are supposed to win. That's saying the Lakers having a 5-point disadvantage equals the playing field between the two teams.
Awesome. I love it. Okay, I guess we can kind of reel it back a little bit. I think this is something that every time I was learning about sports betting, this is like the first thing that came up. And it's the idea of bankroll management and not putting like 100% of your money in your pot onto like one bet. Can you talk to me a little bit about maybe even your idea of bankroll management and kind of how people can utilize that to do like safe betting?
Sure. Well, obviously the number one rule in any sort of gambling is don't bet money you don't have. That is, you don't want to get into gambling debt. It's not worth it. You don't want to do it. So it's individual to each person. It depends on how much money you have, you know, how much income you have to freely spend that isn't dedicated to family or bills, gas, whatever. And how much you're comfortable betting on each game. So if you're only want to bet $10 a game, you don't need a bankroll of $20,000, right? You need a bankroll of $100. So it's just sticking to a bankroll of a set of money that you're okay losing, and you'll be, if you lose it, you're still okay in life.
Gotcha. So
you'll get through life. You won't be in trouble.
Yeah.
It's setting aside a certain amount of money that you're okay. If you have to be okay losing it, because you could lose it all. You're going to lose bets. There's a chance that you lose it all. So you have to be comfortable losing that set of money and only that money, and keep it completely separate from the important financials in your life.
Love it. What's like I guess my question is like, what's a good like bankroll percentage to sports bet with? Let's say you're out for a night and you're either betting on just one game or you're betting on multiples. Would you just say it for a certain percentage for the whole night? And like, what's kind of that percentage?
Well, I would never bet 100% of your bankroll at once.
Yeah.
Because if you lose that bet, then you're done. You need to build your bankroll back up by getting paychecks or whatever, however you get your money.
Yeah.
So there's confidence levels in each game. Like if you're very confident that the Lakers are in a cover, then maybe you throw 20% of your bankroll on it. And if you lose, you kind of take a big hit. But if you win, there's a big win. And if you're less confident, maybe you throw 2% or 3%.
Yeah.
So it all depends on your confidence in the game.
Gotcha. So I guess we can kind of now go into what the idea of a money line is. Can you tell us a little bit more what a money line is?
Money line is picking a team to win, just win the game. No spread involved. However, the the money line, like if we go back to our example of me taking the best team in the league, you taking the worst team in the league,
Yeah.
you obviously wouldn't take it as if I was putting up $20, you were putting up $20. It's not
Yeah.
worth it for you. They're probably going to lose.
Yeah.
So the way a money line works is it's essentially Vegas saying, okay, we'll take the worst team, but you have to give us 4-to-1 odds, let's say.
Okay.
So if I said I'd give you 4-to-1 odds, you say, okay, yeah, sure. I could lose $20 or I could make $80.
Yeah.
Right. So it kind of balances the playing field.
Gotcha.
So that's what a money line is. There's plus and minus. So plus means you're getting the better odds because it's an underdog.
Mm-hmm.
Minus means you're giving Vegas the better odds because
Mm-hmm.
it's a favorite. So if a team is minus 400, you are giving Vegas 4-to-1 odds. So you would have to bet $400 to profit $100.
Okay.
But on the flip side, if it was plus 400, you would have to, if you wagered $100, you would profit $400.
Gotcha. So
Mhm.
another way to kind of just even out the playing field. And
Yeah.
you know, like I was enjoying about reading about money lines is that you're betting on who's winning and losing. With spreads, it's like who was like the closest with points, and it's more points. Someone could win the game, but you could still like lose the bet if you bet
Exactly.
on them. So I think
Yeah.
that's cool.
Yeah.
So what can you tell me a little bit more about what it just means for just a straight bet?
Yeah, a straight bet is when you take one bet at a time. So there's multiple ways to bet. There's the two most popular ones are a straight bet or a parlay.
Mm-hmm.
A straight bet is when you're just betting on one thing, like the Lakers to win. That's a straight bet.
Okay.
A parlay is when you bet multiple things, but every game that you pick, your bet has to win for you to win the whole bet. The catch to it is you're wagering less for better odds,
Okay.
but you have to, if you pick five, let's say you pick 5 bets in the parlay, all 5 have to win for you to win your bet. If only one loses, you lose. It's kind of a low risk, high reward, or I'm sorry, high risk, high reward, but you're wagering less money to win more.
So why, if I was someone that was getting into sports betting, why would I
Mhm.
choose a straight bet versus a parlay? Like, kind of what's the pros and cons of both of those?
Well, a straight bet is less risk.
Mm-hmm.
Parlay, it's appealing because there's the chance to win a lot of money by wagering not as much.
Yeah.
But it's difficult because you need so many things to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's harder to hit a parlay, but it's so appealing because you can make so much money off of it.
Yeah. Can you talk to me a little about what like a normal parlay is versus like an open parlay?
Yeah, a normal parlay is when you pick, let's say you're picking 3 bets in a parlay and you pick them all at once
Mm-hmm.
and submit the parlay. So that's just a normal parlay. An open parlay, you have time. You can pick each leg and you can pick it over a period of time.
Mm.
So let's say the first leg of your parlay is tonight, and it wins. So you have an open parlay with 2 open spots left, and let's say in a week I find a game that I really like, I can make my bet for that game and put it in that parlay.
Okay.
And if that wins, the parlay is still alive, and then you go to one more game. And so it's kind of so you don't have to rush yourself. So if you want to place a parlay, be only like one game. And like today, if you want to place a parlay, be only like one game, you can add open spots and make an open parlay and fill it later on when you find another bet that you love.
Cool. Is there like it all has to be done in a month? It all has to be done in 2 weeks? Is there usually
I believe the time period's 3 months.
3 months.
Yeah.
That's cool. So it's kind of the same odds as a straight bet, but you have time to kind of think through some of the games.
Well, it's actually the same odds as a parlay.
Sorry,
but it's like kind of taking it.
It's
same
the
odds
same
as parlay,
idea,
but
yes, betting on each one, like it's almost like a straight bet, but the odds wise, it's more like a
correct.
parlay.
Correct. Yeah.
Cool. That's awesome. Okay. I think now we've kind of covered spreads, we've kind of covered money line. Maybe we can talk a little bit about over under.
Yeah. So over under refers to some sort of total. Most common one is like in a basketball game, let's say the over under is 200.
Mm-hmm.
So you think they're going to score more than 200 points or less than 200 points?
Mm-hmm. So, and that's cumulative between the 2 teams.
Cumulative between the 2 teams. So if the final score is 102 to 100, they scored a 202 points. So if the over under was 200, the over would win because they scored 202.
Cool. So why would I do over under versus just like a straight bet or a spread or?
Yeah. Well, sometimes there's a game between two really good offenses. Both teams are really good at offense. Both teams are really bad on defense.
Mhm.
You're not quite sure who's going to win, but you know there's going to be a ton of points scored.
Yeah.
So you take the over.
Yeah.
That way it doesn't matter who wins. A team could win by 100 or lose by 100. As long as they score enough points, your over wins.
Can you tell me, because obviously that's kind of a little bit more of like an interesting, it's not just a win or lose. Can you tell me a little more about other types of just like fun bets that you've seen out there? Like,
yeah. Prop bets are another popular kind of bet. It's betting on like how many points a player will score, or like what round a UFC fight will end in, or how many passing yards Patrick Mahomes would have. Like those are popular prop bets. And then like big sporting events like the Super Bowl, for instance, there's like hundreds of prop bets you can bet on. Like you can bet on the Gatorade color, like it's dumped on the winning coach. You can
how
bet
does
on
that work, like with the betting? Like, is it between two colors and it's just like?
It's actually between the one for this year. I think it was between 7 colors.
And how does that work? People just like put money on a color and then
Vegas sets odds for it. I think blue was like plus 200 and it ranged all the way to purple, which was like plus 1800. So I guess no one drinks purple in the NFL. I don't know. Vegas has this information. They feel comfortable putting out these odds. I don't know how they do it.
wow.
But it's something you can bet on. You can, like a lot of people bet on the national anthem time. Like whether it goes over or under a certain amount of seconds. Yeah,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, there's prop bets for just about everything in sports.
Crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I guess we could kind of go into now the idea of like vig and how it's like not just like 50-50 when you're betting.
Yeah. So most spread bets or over unders, since they're about even, the lines are minus 110 odds. So it's you're giving Vegas 1.1 to 1. And that 0.1, since it's an even bet, you would think it'd be 50-50. So it should just be even money. So it should be like I put up 20, you put up 20. But Vegas, it's kind of like Vegas's fee, like the sportsbook fee, if you want to call it the vig. So for Vegas going through all this work, you placing the bet, them handling the bet, handling all that, it's essentially them charging 0.1 of the bet to. So like if you just want to bet on Lakers -5 on minus 110 odds, the bet essentially is even, but it's you wagering $11 to profit $10, or $110 to profit $100.
Interesting. This really reminded me of like in finance, like if you're going to invest in like an ETF or mutual fund, there's like an you can't just like invest into it and have nothing like for the people putting it on. So it kind of reminds me of that. For everyone who's in finance, it reminds me of the expense.
Very similar.
Like equal. Really, really interesting. Okay, I guess can you talk to me a little bit, kind of on the same realm as finance, of picking stocks through research versus emotion? Can you talk to me a little about how it's really important to balance research and emotion when sports betting?
Yeah. If you bet on sports, then you're probably a sports fan. You probably have your favorite teams. Favorite teams might be really good. They might be really bad. Like I'm a fan of some good teams and some bad teams. And so it's very important to bet with your head and not your heart.
Yeah.
Just because I want the Lakers to win doesn't mean they're going to. Yeah. Doesn't mean I should bet on them to win. I'm going to root for them as hard as I would root for any bet I would take, just because fandom and I love the team, but I'm not going to financially put my money on them to win. Now, if I do research on the game and it looks like the team that they're playing should win and should cover the spread, then maybe I have to bite the bullet and bet against the team I love. But that's just putting finances over fandom.
Yeah.
Research over emotion.
I guess when you talk about research into sports betting, can you break down like 4 or 5 things you look for in every game before you bet on it?
Yeah. Well, the number one thing is I look at the spread. Like I was talking about earlier, does it look fishy? Does it look like Vegas knows something? Does it look wrong to me?
What would look wrong? If it was just really, really huge or really
like if the best team in the league is playing the worst team in the league and the spread was only 1 or 2 points in basketball, let's say.
Why would it? Okay, you would see that worst team playing the best team, and the spread's 1 or 2 points. what would go through your mind? Like how was the starting point of being like, okay, I need to research this. Why? Like, would you start looking?
That would raise a red flag for me. So I would look into the game. I would look into who's injured.
Gotcha.
During COVID time, I would look at, did someone on the team get COVID? Our players going to be out because of it?
I'm sure COVID has affected sports betting.
COVID has affected sports betting a lot.
Crazy.
Yeah. So yeah, it then I would kind of look into team schedules. The way scheduling has changed in sports so much that teams don't play back-to-back games as often on back-to-back nights. Players aren't really used to it, and so there's a lot of research that's gone into whether teams play worse on back-to-back nights, just because players are more tired. They traveled overnight, whatever. If teams played a road game and then had to travel somewhere for another game, or even if teams play back-to-back home games, so it's not like they traveled, but the players are just tired because they played last night. Now they just played tonight.
That's so interesting, and that really ties back to like, because like I played volleyball in college, and over COVID it was crazy. We'll have weekends with 3 games, and by the last one you're really tired. And so is the other team playing three games, or is the other team fresh? Like, that's just another kind of layer of things.
Yep. I guess something to look into.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you look at when deciding and doing your research into a bet?
Yeah. You kind of look at the tendencies of a game, or if a team has momentum. Momentum is something that's really hard to quantify, and Vegas is all numbers, all statistics, all probabilities. And momentum's the one thing in sports that you can't account for statistically.
Yeah.
So if a team has a lot of momentum, you may be a little more persuaded to pick them. Maybe if they're an underdog and they're only, let's say, a 2-point underdog, but you think they really have a chance because they're a hot team, they have momentum, they've won 10 of their last 12 or whatever, then maybe you bet on their money line to win as an underdog and profit a little bit more than betting a favorite.
Yeah. I guess another question for you is, do you usually pick the underdog or the team that's supposed to win in your psychology of sports betting?
Usually when I bet underdogs, I bet the spread.
Okay.
Just because it's a safer play. And maybe I'm
explain that a little bit more.
Like a safer play.
Like when you bet the underdogs, you look at the spread. What do you mean by looking at the spread?
So if I think, let's say the spread in the game is 5 points, and I think that the team that's +5, so the underdog, they're playing really good. Let's say we're talking about basketball. They're playing really good basketball. They're rested. They're healthy. They have a lot of momentum. I think that there is a chance they could win, but I'm not 100% sure of that. But I think the game's going to be very close. And I'll take +5, a bet I feel very confident in, give up a little worse odds. But it's safer than taking the money line because they don't have to win. They have to, if they lose by 3 points, I still win.
Interesting. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that makes sense. I love that. Okay. That was great. Okay, I guess actually you at the very beginning you kept talking about odds and implied odds. Can you kind of break that down?
Yeah. Implied odds are it's a very complicated term, and especially complicated in sports betting. When a team has implied odds to win any game outside of like -110 or +200, that comes with its statistical implied odds. I think when a team is +165 as a money line underdog, I think they have like 38% implied odds to win the game, something like that. So it's all right. Sports betting is all odds. It's all, anything in gambling is all odds. So you are getting 38% that your team will win the game at 1.65 to 1 odds. That's kind of how implied odds and sports betting odds kind of connect.
Gotcha. I guess like it's kind of hard when you're been doing it for so long to be like, okay, what's the basics like in your mind? But what are there any other like concepts that you're like, we need to touch on this? Like if you were to like be teaching this to your sister, like what are other topics that you're like, she needs to know these?
I would just say that doing research is the most important thing you can do,
Mm-hmm.
and understanding your bet and like exposing yourself to the sport and kind of understanding the little nuances that may not be touched on by Vegas that can't really be quantified, like momentum.
Mm-hmm.
And the most important thing is you're going to lose bets. You're going to have losing days. You're going to have losing weeks. It's just going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone doesn't win every single day. Everyone doesn't win every single bet.
Yeah.
You're going to go on cold streaks. You're going to go on hot streaks. It's a roller coaster, and you strap in for the ride. And that's why it's so important to have a bankroll, that if you lose a few bets, you don't go digging into important finances and digging into pockets. And that's when you really get into trouble. And that's when it's time to stop. But so just understanding that you're going to lose, and that's something you have to accept. You're not going to be 100%, but you still have to be smart. You can't get emotional. That's another time emotion comes in, is, oh, if I go big on this bet, I'll get it all back.
Mm-hmm.
That's not smart. It's not a smart thing to do.
Not at all.
You got to take it one step at a time, take it one bet at a time. Don't necessarily look at your betting record all time, and trying to just get back to even. Take it one day at a time, take it one bet at a time, and just stick to your bankroll and have fun.